Johnny, my friend, I'm doing great. I've got a cup of tea. I'm ready to go.
What flavor is your tea today? Is it the
You know,
normal
it's always
cinnamon?
apple cinnamon. It's just my
Yeah,
favorite. I
yeah, love
probably
it.
should stop being so boring and mix it up a little bit with some English breakfast tea, but I had that earlier, so this is my next cup.
Okay, well, I'm going to go out and buy some apple cinnamon, and then we can share it together on a Friday. And next time you won't have it. And we're going to talk about something which is has been relevant throughout human history, and that's the roots and the high cost of extremism. It's something that is, of course, touted by the governments nowadays. Everybody's an extremist who doesn't agree with you, almost. But let's start off. What are the roots of extremism?
Well, you know, the human brain really does love familiarity. And so it looks for things that it can cabbage on to, grab a hold of, which is very, very familiar to us. And then it loves to create neural pathways. There's a bit of a balance between a healthy, helpful neural pathway and a rigid neural pathway. But since our brains really favor efficiency, it tends to really heap on and heap on more of the same types of information. And this can lead to what we call a fixed mindset, or a term that I use a lot is cognitive rigidity, where the mind really becomes resistant to new information, and it fosters what we know of, a silo mentality. And over time, this kind of culminates in extremism for any opposing views. And so, an interesting thing happened to me just yesterday. Actually, I was walking from an appointment, and this set of five numbers came to my mind. I'll just make up some: 86753. So I was headed to my vehicle, and I began wondering, gosh, where did these numbers come from? And when I finally got to my vehicle, of course, these five numbers are the code to get in my vehicle. Now, here's my point. My brain already began coming up with an answer before I ever got to the point that an answer was necessary. I had programmed these numbers into my mind so very deeply that I'd already answered a question that had not yet become asked of me. And it's the same thing with extremism. When we develop a mindset of extremism, a fixed mindset, or that cognitive rigidity I'm talking about, it's like Einstein said, a mind that is fixed in a silo ceases to grow. And in that stagnation, it breeds the seeds of extremism. So, one of the dangers of this cognitive rigidity is simply a mind that has become stunted in its growth.
Yeah, right. Okay. And that makes sense because then you go to certain places, the darker places, to be able to get answers for a lot of things. What are the many costs of extremism then?
Well, it really is amazing, because if you go to one extreme, you talk about cults, and I've done lots of spaces on X on cults. Is one of my favorite things to study in undergrad school, getting one of my undergrad degrees in religion and philosophy. And that is, we really, really, crave answers to things. Our brains seek to close a loop. When we don't have an answer to something, that loop kind of stays open, and our brain develops a certain intolerance for not knowing. It develops an intolerance for lack of knowledge, and that becomes a bit of a vacuum. And the danger is, once you already have those pre-existing belief systems and pre-existing skeletal frameworks from someone that may not have your best interest in mind, then it becomes almost like a fly trap, that all kinds of information, regardless of its accuracy, will stick to that, and your brain comes to accept things as glued to that, when it may not have accepted that years ago. So it becomes a very deep and dark and scary rabbit hole. It becomes an abyss that can swallow your life and ruin your relationships. And I've seen family members who were very close, and then one or the other of them has gotten in this, think tank. Really, it's the anti think tank of extremist beliefs and ruptured families and ruptured marriages and ruptured churches, religious institutions, ruptured businesses, destroyed businesses, and it's really the opposite. You hear people talking about overthinking, and this is a grand example of underthinking. Underthinking is ignoring important aspects of the situation. So really, humans don't do well if we have thoughts that are fairy tales. And what is a fairy tale thought? A fairy tale thought is one that you think can withstand no disagreement, you think can withstand no challenges. And so the best mindset we can develop is that even some of our deepest, most challenged beliefs absolutely can be challenged. And if they can't, then what does that differ more than a useless fairy tale?
Yeah, what you're talking there as well is it like the extreme overthinking and underthinking at the extremities of the thought process and the mind. We go to these places because we don't have I suppose, are they like kind of safe places for us to go if we can't work out what's going on and we can't understand the middle of an argument? Do humans tend to always go to these extreme mental processes to figure out what's happening, and do they always find fallacy there?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think that we go to extremes because we think that there is safety in the extremes. We think that ambiguity is dangerous, and really, ambiguity is where creation begins. Ambiguity is where curiosity can lead us to discovering new things. And so, really, once you've decided what something is, and you've decided that that's something that you've decided can withstand no challenges, you've actually ended your ability to discover wisdom. And so extremism is actually the absence of wisdom, the absence of discovery. All the discoveries that you can mention any discovery, human flight, rockets, post-it notes, none of those would have happened if someone was in an extremist mindset that this cannot be done or this must be done. A little snarky comment from an old cranky psychologist, now long years passed away, from New York, named Albert Ellis, one of my favorite guys who was on the planet, would say, thinking something must be this way or must be that way, he labeled that masturbating. He would say, you're masturbating all over yourself. It's so embarrassing. Don't do it in public, for heaven's sakes. But you see this going on with any political party. There are no political parties that are immune to this. There are no religious groups that are immune to this. And it's this extremist mindset that really limits those groups and actually comes to sabotage them, and can see even the group that's practicing extremism eventually falls apart. And if we're students of history, we'll see that happening over and over and over again. William James would put it this way: what we think we become, uh, what we repeat, we solidify. And extremism is a product of unchallenged thoughts repeated into permanence. So think about that. Why would you want something repeated into permanence if it doesn't serve you well? And extremist mindsets typically do not.
Yeah, most definitely. I can understand that. I have a question from the chat, but I'm going to hold off just for a second before I get there, because I think we'll have a little bit of time coming close to when we get towards the end. Um, I I never like to go too deep into politics whenever we speak, because I really love our chats and how they are and how they're kind of separated from politics in many different ways. But it's clear that extremists on both sides are driving the violence in the Middle East. Do the extremists always become the pinnacle of a society's hierarchy when there are pressures such as war and unrest?
Well, I think they do because if we look at it from a survivalist, mindset, all of us have a fight or flight mechanism, and it's when we're in a state of fight or flight that our focus narrows to a pinprick point of we just have to survive. And we don't pay attention to other things. We don't pay attention to where our feet are, what we're stepping on. One of my favorite examples is one of the most dangerous things you can do is jump in the water to save a drowning person. This is why you want to throw them a life preserver, because people, in an attempt to save themselves, will drown other people. So the other thing that happens with an extremist mindset is it comes to be a survival mindset. And people think if anyone disagrees with this very narrow mindset, that is a threat to my survival. One of the greatest and most destructive cognitive distortions in the world is this group of people is a threat to my survival, no matter what. They don't have to have a weapon. Even if they don't have a weapon, they're still going to be a threat. And we really, in our survivalist mindset approach, come to believe that even another human breathing can be a threat to us. And when we see that there's a threat, again, we can drown other people in a attempt to save ourselves. And so when you see these extremist mindsets, it's really a survival mechanism, and people really believe it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that's
they
why they rise
do.
to the top. Well, because they have an answer. We think that the people at the top, at the extremist top, have an answer for our survival.
And often it's just their confidence in a wrong answer, which leads us down that way. Because of course, confidence can sell us a lot of things, can't it? What you mentioned earlier on, silo mindset. What is a silo mindset?
It's really one that believes that, well, let's just take a thunderstorm. We're hoping to get some thunderstorms here because it's so dry. And I'm hoping for lots and lots and lots of raindrops. I'm so tired of watering everything, you know. But a extremist mindset, a silo mindset would believe that only one single raindrop held the cure, held the answer, held the salvation for my yard. When one single raindrop may hold a part of that, but all the other raindrops, they have their place and they're important too. So a siloed mindset really focuses in on one single thought process, one single type of mentality, one single party platform to the expense of all others. Again, it's a great experiment in underthinking. You know, Soren Kierkegaard, one of my favorite existentialist philosophers, would say that in a world devoid of ambiguity, only the extreme seems true. But it's really in the shades of gray that we humans exist. Part of our free will is the ability to exercise the free will of thought. And the best place to start is to draw a circle around your mindset and investigate your own mindset. How do I know what I believe? What do I believe? How accurate, realistic, and healthy is it? And could I, in good faith, recommend that to everyone else? And one of the best things you can do is look at the chinks in the armor of that belief system. And again, if you can find nothing that disagrees with it, there's nothing at all that could challenge it, then my friend, you don't have something stable. You're simply living with your feet planted in the midst of a fairy tale.
Yeah, yeah. You're so good to talk to. And you're so good for sorting out my mind. We got just a couple of minutes left. So I'm going to ask you the two questions from the chat if I can manage to fit them in. Joel Allen says, what do you think about metaphorical truth or the notion that something can be literal, false, yet adaptive? Can superficially untrue things point us towards a deeper truth? And he says, I believe such falsehoods often reveal truth about the world and our relationship to it.
Sure, sure. I think it is very good. I would really focus my attention on things that are true, but I would also look at things which may not be completely accurate, realistic, and healthy. I often encourage people, instead of just focusing on what you believe, look at what others say they believe, even if you think it may not be true, and try to come to an understanding of why might they believe that. I mean, Marcus Aurelius said that no one gets out of bed meaning to do evil or planning to do evil. We all think we're doing what's best, but then we get off track. And so instead of thinking that the people that disagree with us are evil or have ill will toward us just because it's us and they really don't know us, then look, why might they think this? Where might this thought process have come from? And where might we be more alike than different?
Yeah. And one very quick question from Dark Commission. He says, as it's Friday, is there any sci-fi on your bookshelf?
That's a great question. There's always sci-fi on my bookshelf. I am about to launch into the second season of that Lord of the Rings tale on Amazon Prime, and I'm going to see what else is good out there. That's a great question because what I found, there's actually some good research about this, that watching science fiction can actually embiggen, I'll use an Ant-Man term, can actually embiggen our mindset and can actually stretch our mindset. So I'm a big fan of science fiction. I'm always open for recommendations. So if you have some, let me know. I'll be glad to look into it.